Alright, today we're going to talk about some very basic camera animation in Adobe After Effects. So, we are in After Effects. I have this simple scene with some texture in the background as my background. I have my logo and I have this animating text, welcome to my YouTube channel, that is somewhere else in the scene. We're going to treat this like a little bit of 3D, 2.5D, so we can just learn some basics about After Effects camera animation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hold Control-Alt-Shift-C on our keyboard, and that will bring up our camera settings. We'll keep this name Camera 1. I love working with a 35mm preset. That's just my favorite focal length. That's the lens that I'm filming on right now, and we're going to set this to a 1-node camera. We'll talk about 2 nodes in a future video, but for right now we're going to keep it simple and use 1 node. So once all of this is set up, let's click OK. Now in my timeline here, I have some markers that say when I want the camera animation to start moving. So first what we're going to do is we're going to hit P on our keyboard, and that's going to reveal our position property on our camera. We're going to right click and we're going to click on separate dimensions. What we're doing is we're basically saying X, Y, and Z, I want you to be different properties on the After Effects camera so we can animate each movement individually. So what that means is we're first going to click on the start and make a keyframe on the X, Y, and Z by clicking on the stopwatch. Now, one of the really cool things about the After Effects camera is if you hit H on the keyboard, you can get the hand tool and move your composition around. Now I want to move my camera around instead, so I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard, and then with the middle mouse button, the middle where the scroll wheel is, you're going to press that down, and that will allow you to move your camera around while you're facing wherever your background is. So it won't change the orientation of the camera, it will move your camera around the scene. Now if you left click, you hold left click on your mouse and you turn, it will change where your camera is looking. Now this is changing the orientation. You could keyframe this. I don't want to right now, so I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to Control Z to undo that. And then if you are holding Alt and you hold right click, this will bring the camera forward and backwards. So I have my keyframe set up here on the start marker, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit forward in time and see where the text animation is. So I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to middle mouse button. I'm going to see where that text, and we can find the welcome to my YouTube channel text down here, and then I'm going to, with holding Alt, I'm going to hold right click and zoom in on that, and middle mouse button, orient the composition to be kind of center frame, not perfect. I want it to give it that feel of like a handheld camera look. So we can take these keyframes that we just made right here where camera move 1 is, and we'll Control C to copy, and we will paste that on the start. So now we can see if we play our timeline, we scrub through, the text animates on welcome to my YouTube channel. So I want to make this a little bit more visually interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to the very beginning of my timeline at frame 00, hold Alt, and I'm going to zoom forward. So what this is going to do is if I play this back, it will give us a little like pan back with the camera. We're dollying backwards, then the text comes on. Then from here, what I can do is I can make a second set of keyframes. So the camera is going to stay static on this for just a moment so we can read it, because legibility is important for design. And then we're going to start animating our camera. Now, one of my favorite things I like to do with the After Effects camera is use that sort of like handheld mixture with a sort of like robotic look. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move each property individually. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go forward maybe about 2 seconds. So if I'm at the 4-second and 13 frame mark, I'm just going to move to the 6-second mark here, and I'm going to, with the Alt button held, pan to the left. So everything is moving to the right. And kind of just set myself up there. You know what? I'm actually going to change the X value to 960. And the reason why is I'm working with a 1920 by 1080 composition. So that will put us directly center of the composition. So from here, I'm going to make sure I have keyframes set on all of my properties. I'm going to go forward about another second. And I'm going to set the Y position to 540. Because that is direct center in our 1920 by 1080 composition. We will hit enter, and then we'll make a keyframe by clicking on the little diamond on the X and Z property. So now our logo is centered. But it is a little big, so I want to go forward maybe another 12 frames, 7 seconds, 13 frames. That's fine. And I want to pull my camera back. You can also click on the property and slide back your property here, and we can get that sort of composition with our logo center frame. Now, just for my own sanity, what I like to do is click on the keyframe button. I know there's no animation happening here, but this will allow me to have camera moves in between these keyframes. I guess what I'm trying to say is if I wanted to move from here, I'm not trying to blend other keyframes further or earlier back in time. So I know we just went through a lot. Let me play back that animation and we'll take a look at what we have. So camera pulls back, then we stay on it for a second, camera moves, and it comes back to the logo. Now, it does look a little robotic, and there are ways in which you can make this a little bit more visually interesting. One thing to do is you can actually take all of these keyframes, and you can, if you hold Alt and you select the last keyframe in your selection, you can actually squash these down, make it a little bit faster. So now, I felt it was a little slow. I can play that, and then now it has that faster look, just because we brought those keyframes a little bit closer. One more thing we could do to make this feel a little bit more organic is we can hit our F9 button on our keyboard, and that will ease all these keyframes, so it won't be such a harsh movement. It'll sort of start slow and then move faster. It'll accelerate and decelerate. Feels a little bit more natural as opposed to the hard linear keyframes. Now, if you go to your graph editor, you can see the movement and how it sort of eases in and eases out. If you check out some of the other videos on my YouTube channel, you'll see some tips on easing, but we'll just keep it very simple there. I want to show you one final tip for animating some very basic camera animation, and that is adding some camera shake. So what you're going to do is with your camera selected, you're going to hit R on your keyboard, and that will bring up your orientation or your X, Y, and Z rotation properties. Now what I want to do is I want to hold Alt on my keyboard, and I want to click on the orientation stopwatch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type a very simple line of code, nothing too crazy. Don't be afraid of this part. You're going to type wiggle 0.5 comma 0.5. And all that's going to do is it's going to say every 0.5 seconds, I want you to change the values of the orientation by 0.5. So you have the frequency of how often the wiggle is happening and how much is happening every 0.5 seconds. So now if we go back to the beginning of our timeline and we play it back, there is a very slight amount of wiggle or movement or camera shake to our camera, and makes it feel like it's a little bit more handheld. So these are some of my basic tips when it comes to very basic After Effects camera animation. This can be significantly more complex if you want to. We could talk about 2-node cameras. There's other things you could do with focal length, but this is a good starting point for very basic camera animation in After Effects. If you learned something, let me know in the comment section down below, or hit me up on Instagram, youtube.com/JohnJagsKnee, or at JohnJagsKnee, just at JohnJagsKnee everywhere. You can find all of my information and contact stuff there as well. So, I will leave it here. I hope you have a wonderful day. And, final tip, eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight and you'll make some. Goodbye, my friends. Bye.